The first block that we're going to see is inferior alveolar nerve block, the conventional technique or the direct technique. Now, when is this block indicated? This block is indicated when we are doing procedures involving one half of the mandible. Okay, that is the mandibular teeth and also the basal bone in that area, or the procedures that are involving the tongue, ipsilateral half of the tongue, or the procedures that are involving the buccal mucoperiosteum and lower third of the cheek of that particular side. Now, how do you position the patient when you're doing a conventional or a direct technique of inferior alveolar nerve block? Make sure that the patient, the level of the patient's mandible is just below the level of your elbow, and make sure that the patient is in a semi-supine position so that we avoid problems of the patient going into vasovagal syncope when the needle is being inserted into the patient. So first, let's get the patient into the position. Good morning, everyone. What we're going to learn now is how a inferior alveolar nerve block is given. The first technique that's being demonstrated is the conventional or the direct technique of inferior alveolar nerve block. Now, when is this procedure indicated? This is indicated whenever we are performing all the procedures that are involving one half of the mandible. That is, the procedures that are involving the teeth, procedures that are involving the basal bone of the mandible of that particular side. Whenever we are doing procedures of one half of the tongue, that is the ipsilateral side of the tongue, and then when there are procedures that are involving the lower third of the cheek, that is the buccal mucoperiosteum. Now, what are the nerves that are technically blocked through this conventional inferior alveolar nerve block technique? We block the inferior alveolar nerve and its branches, which include the mental nerve and the incisive nerve. The second nerve that's blocked is the lingual nerve, which supplies general sensation to the anterior 2/3 of the tongue of that particular side. Then the third nerve that is blocked is the buccal branch, which is a sensory branch arising from the anterior division of the mandibular nerve. When you're trying to block the nerve, first thing that we have to always keep in mind is the chair position of the patient. The chair position and the position of the patient. When you're looking at the chair position, make sure that the patient's mandible is just below the level of your elbow. Okay. Always keep the patient in a semi-supine position, or sometimes if you're operating as a sitting position, you can put the patient in supine position. This is to avoid the syncope, which is a common complication that happens when you're giving a needle prick to the patient. So first, adjusting the patient position. Once you have arrived at this position, make sure that the patient opens their mouth to a maximum extent. Please open your mouth. At this point, see to it that the mandibular plane, that is the mandibular occlusal plane, is parallel to the true horizontal or the floor. Next is the operator position. The operator stands in 8 o'clock position, a right-handed operator. When he is giving a right side block for the patient, the operator stands at 8 o'clock position. Whereas when you're giving a left side block, the operator stands at a 10 o'clock position. This is the operator position. Now, once you have done this, the first thing we do is identification of the landmarks. Now, what are the landmarks for the conventional inferior alveolar nerve block? What are the landmarks of inferior alveolar nerve block? Okay. The landmarks include, first, you start with the mucobuccal fold from the region of the mandibular first molar. Take your index finger posteriorly, and then you will be at the ascending border of the ramus or the external oblique ridge. Once you're distal to the 8 or the 7, open your mouth. Turn the finger medially, then we will dip into the coronoid notch. Coronoid notch is a space that is present between the external and the internal oblique ridges. Once you place the finger on the external, on the coronoid notch, the next landmark that we need to look at is a pterygomandibular raphe. This is usually is a soft tissue landmark, and it is not a skeletal landmark. And we need to have the patient in maximum mouth opening so that it can be clearly delineated. Open your mouth. So here is the pterygomandibular raphe, which is the intersection of the buccinator and the superior constrictor. The buccinator ends there and the superior constrictor starts posterior to it. Once you have done this, the next landmark is the mandibular occlusal plane and the contralateral premolar. All these landmarks need to be identified so that we get the position of the needle right. When we're giving an inferior alveolar nerve block, we use a long needle. A long needle is a 1.5-inch needle, which is literally a 40 needle. We do not use a short needle. That is because we have to go deep into the tissue and it has a tendency to break at the junction of the needle and the hub. That is why I use a long needle. And the gauge of the needle is between 25 or 27. So that the thinner the needle, the less amount of trauma to the tissue. Once you have loaded your syringe with 2.5 ml of lignocaine with adrenaline, now the first thing that we do is we identify the landmarks again. Use your thumb. Use your thumb. Use your thumb. Place your thumb on the coronoid notch. Now ask the patient to open the mouth wide. Identify the pterygomandibular raphe. Now there are 3 important points that we need to remember here. One is the height of insertion of the needle, the anteroposterior point of insertion of the needle, and the direction from which the barrel in which the barrel has to be placed. Now, the barrel has to be on the contralateral side premolar, first and second premolar region. The height of insertion of the needle is 8 to 10 mm above the occlusal plane, which corresponds to the deepest point of the pterygomandibular raphe in maximum mouth opening. So once you ask a patient to open the mouth maximum, we can see the deepest point of the pterygomandibular raphe. So that corresponds to the height of insertion of the needle. Now anteroposterior position. Now take between the index finger on the coronoid notch and the pterygomandibular raphe, when you divide that area into 3 parts, the junction of anterior 2/3 and the posterior 1/3 corresponds to the anteroposterior position for the direction of insertion of the needle, which is here. Open your mouth. Okay. So that is a point of insertion of the needle. Once the needle is inserted into the tissue, the needle goes 2/3 into the tissue, wherein the final position of the needle is within the pterygomandibular space, which is bound technically by the medial pterygoid medially and the medial surface of the lateral of the ramus of the mandible on the lateral side. Posteriorly, we have the parotid. So the final position of the needle is just at the region of the lingula, where the inferior alveolar nerve enters the mandibular canal. Once we have reached this position, that means we're going to hit the bone. There we aspirate and we deposit 1.2 cc of local anesthetic agent. Now, sometimes there can be issues wherein we could be hitting the mandible too early during the process of insertion of the needle. That is when we swing the barrel anteriorly, reposition, going to the depth that is needed, then swing the barrel back onto the premolars, feel the bone and then deposit the local anesthetic when we have reached the final position. Sometimes there is a possibility that we would have not reached the bone at all, and then we are not feeling the bone. At that point means we are too anterior. The barrel of the syringe is on the incisors, because of which we have gone too deep into the pterygomandibular space, and never deposit local anesthetic when you don't hit the bone. Because if you go too deep into the pterygomandibular space, the posterior boundary is formed by the parotid gland, which contains a facial nerve. So these are the cases where there will be a higher chances that we may paralyze the facial nerve by intraparotid deposition. That is why if you haven't hit the bone and your barrel is too anterior, move the barrel more posteriorly, reposition the barrel more posteriorly, then insert the needle deeper so that you will hit the bone. Once you hit the bone, aspirate and deposit the local anesthetic agent in the final position of the needle. Once you have deposited the local anesthetic at the inferior alveolar nerve, now retract the needle halfway. Once you have retracted the needle halfway, swing the barrel of the needle onto the same side. That is where you will deposit the local anesthetic again after aspiration for the lingual nerve, because the lingual nerve is anterior to the inferior alveolar nerve in the pterygomandibular space. Once this is done, retract the needle completely. Now we have to anesthetize the long buccal nerve. Long buccal nerve crosses the external oblique ridge and the coronoid notch from the lingual to the buccal side, just distal to third molar. So the site of insertion of the needle is distal and buccal to the third molar tooth onto the buccal shelf area. Aspirate and deposit 0.2 cc of local anesthetic in this area so that the long buccal nerve is anesthetized. Once we have completed the anesthesia, administering the anesthesia, make sure that you use a scoop technique and you don't have any needle prick injuries to your fingers. Once you have deposited the local anesthetic, give at least 5 minutes time so that the anesthetic starts to work. Where do you check for anesthesia? For the inferior alveolar nerve, considering it's both the branches, that is mental and the incisive nerves are also blocked, we will see that ipsilateral half of the lip, the complete mandible, the tongue because the lingual nerve is anesthetized, the floor of the mouth because the lingual nerve is anesthetized again, and the buccal mucoperiosteum and lower third of the cheek because the buccal nerve innervates this area. All of these areas are numb. So, when you're checking for anesthesia, take a blunt probe like a Moon's probe, which is placed between the canine and the premolar to elicit the numbness. For the tongue, we see the lateral border of the tongue, and for the buccal mucoperiosteum, you see the buccal mucoperiosteum in the region of first molar. That is how we elicit that the whole area is anesthetized and the block is working. Other than this, symptomatically, the patient is going to say that he feels heaviness and tingling sensation in one half of the tongue and also in one half of the lower lip onto which the anesthesia has been administered. The next technique of block is Gaugait's technique. Now, Gaugait's technique involves blocking all the branches of the mandibular nerve, including the auriculotemporal, the inferior alveolar, and the lingual in one go. Now, what are the landmarks for it? First, we identify the commissure and then we identify the tragus. The line joining the commissure to the tragus forms the plane in which the needle has to travel. Now, the next thing that we need to identify orally is the mesiopalatal cusp of the second molar. The soft tissue that is present on the mesiopalatal cusp of the second molar forms the point of insertion of the needle for the Gaugait's block. Open your mouth. Always make sure that during Gaugait's technique, patient has the maximum mouth opening because during this process, the condyle tends to translate forwards and the final position of the needle is at the neck of the condyle. So, once the patient has opened her mouth at maximum, identify the mesiopalatal cusp of the second molar and the point of entry of the needle. The point of entry of the needle is just distal into the soft tissues of the mesiopalatal cusp of the maxillary second molar. Once you have entered the tissues, 2/3 of the needle goes in and the direction of the needle is parallel to the line joining the commissure to the tragus. Okay. Once you have gone in, once the needle has penetrated the tissue, we go and hit the neck of the condyle. Once we reach the final point of the needle, that is when we deposit the local anesthetic, which is again 1.2 cc that is deposited in a minute's time. Slow deposition is better so that we do not have any problems of systemic complications. What are the areas that are anesthetized during this process? All the branches of the auriculotemporal nerve, so the anterior part of the ear and the temporal region are numb. Then the complete mandibular inferior alveolar nerve, including its branches, that is the mental and the incisive branches, are anesthetized. So half of the lip and complete half of the mandible is numb. The buccal branch is numb, so the lower third of the cheek is numb, and the lingual nerve is also anesthetized. So half of the tongue and the floor of the mouth are numb. So technically, one half of the lower third of the face gets numb with a Gaugait's technique. However, the only disadvantage is it cannot be used in a patient who has trismus because this can only be administered when the patient has maximum mouth opening. The common complication that we can have with the Gaugait's technique is a facial nerve palsy involving the zygomatic and the temporal branches, because that is where if we slip the neck of the condyle and go into the parotid, we can cause facial nerve palsy involving these two branches. So that is what we need to be cautious about when we are giving a Gaugait's technique of IAND. Thank you. The next technique of nerve block is the Vazirani-Akinosi technique of nerve block. It is also called closed mouth technique. Now, in this technique, we block the inferior alveolar nerve, the lingual nerve, and also the buccal nerve. However, the patient does not have to open his mouth. So, this is indicated in cases where the patient has severe trismus because of various reasons. Now, what are the landmarks that we need to look at in this block is in the closed mouth position. We palpate the external oblique ridge and the coronoid notch, and then the marginal gingiva of the maxillary teeth is the second important landmark. The third landmark is the zygomatic buttress, and the fourth, the point of insertion of the needle is into the soft tissue that is present distal to the maxillary second molar at the region of the marginal gingiva of the maxillary molars. Once we insert the needle in this position, the needle goes into the tissue by 2/3, that is at this level. And once the needle reaches its final position, it is in the pterygomandibular space where we aspirate and deposit 1.82 cc of local anesthetic. That is the closed mouth technique. Now, once we have deposited for the inferior alveolar nerve, we retract the needle because we are on the same side of the mouth. We retract the needle halfway, then we deposit the local, which will anesthetize the lingual nerve. The long buccal nerve is anesthetized separately, wherein we insert the needle distal and buccal to the third molar in the region of buccal shelf area, where the long buccal nerve crosses from the lingual side to the buccal side. So, this is going to anesthetize again all the three nerves as said before, and the areas anesthetized include the buccal mucoperiosteum, the ipsilateral half of the floor of the mouth, ipsilateral half of the tongue, ipsilateral half of the mandible, and ipsilateral half of the lip. This is a simpler block to give, especially when the patient has trismus and is unable to open the mouth, because if the patient does not open the mouth, we will have issues with identification of landmarks in the conventional technique. The next block that we're going to see is a mental nerve block. Mental nerve is a terminal branch of the inferior alveolar nerve, and it branches out from the inferior alveolar nerve at the level of mental foramen. This mental foramen is located at the apex of the second premolar. So, what are the areas that this nerve block anesthetizes? It anesthetizes half of the lip and also the labial mucoperiosteum of that from the region of first premolar till the ipsilateral central incisor, and also the teeth in the same area. Now, what is the needle that we use? We use a 25 or a 27 gauge needle, which is a short needle, which is technically 1-inch needle, which is 25 millimeters in length. Okay. Now, what is the chair position of the patient? The mandible is again at the level of the operator's elbow. When the mouth is open, the mandibular plane is parallel to the horizontal plane. Now, operator position is at the 8 o'clock position when we are doing it on the right side, and for the left side we stand at the region of 10 o'clock position to anesthetize the left side's mental nerve. Now, what are the landmarks that we need to identify? We need to identify the mucobuccal fold from the region of the mandibular first molar. Once you have identified that, pass your finger anteriorly in the region corresponding to the region of the deepest point of the mucobuccal fold. At this point, we feel an irregular area or a dip on the surface of the mandible. That corresponds to the region of the mental foramen. Now, once you have placed your finger there, retract the cheek and the labial mucosa, visualize that particular area, take the needle with the local anesthetic solution and deposit it in the deepest point of the mucobuccal fold in that particular area, that is the region corresponding to the mandibular second premolar. Aspirate and deposit 1.2 cc of the local anesthetic over 1 minute's time, and then retrieve the needle. Now, what are the areas that are anesthetized during this block? One half of the lip, the labial mucoperiosteum corresponding from the region of central incisor to the region of first premolar are anesthetized. The teeth from the central incisor to the first premolar are anesthetized with this block. This is usually used for procedures that are performed over the lip or the anterior labial mucoperiosteum. or from the central incisor to the first premolar. What we're going to see is the Fisher 1, 2, 3 technique. It is also called the indirect technique. This is a technique in which with a single prick, the long buccal, the lingual and the inferior alveolar nerve are blocked. As we do know, what we initially start doing is palpate the landmarks, which includes the mucobuccal fold, the external oblique ridge, and then turn the finger medially and then we palpate the coronoid notch. Now place the finger in the coronoid notch. From the opposite side, just go and bisect the fingernail and then insert the needle into the tissues. At this point, we deposit around 0.2 cc of local anesthetic, which is going to block the long buccal nerve. Once this is done, we swing the barrel to the same side, take the needle in by another 6 to 8 millimeters, at which point we block the lingual nerve. From the lingual nerve, we take the barrel onto the opposite side, advance the needle in by another 10 to 12 millimeters without retrieving it outside. That is when we hit the bone. This corresponds to the region of the lingula of the mandible. That is where we aspirate and then we deposit the local anesthetic. The volume that is deposited is 1.2 cc over a period of 1 minute. This is where we block the inferior alveolar nerve. So the difference between the direct and the indirect technique is that in direct technique, we have multiple pricks that are given. One for the inferior alveolar and one for the long buccal. Whereas in indirect or Fisher's technique, we have one point of insertion. That is at the region of long buccal. That is when the needle enters the tissue where it bisects the fingernail which is placed in the coronoid notch. Once it enters in that area, the needle is only repositioned and advanced to block the lingual and the inferior alveolar nerve. So this is how we give a indirect or Fisher's technique of nerve block. Long buccal nerve is a sensory division that arises from the anterior division of the mandibular nerve. It gives sensory supply to the lower third of the cheek and the buccal mucoperiosteum. So how do we anesthetize this and where do we anesthetize this? Once it originates from its point of origin in the infratemporal fossa, it travels lateral to the lateral pterygoid along the ascending ramus and then crosses from the lingual side to the buccal side in the region of the mandibular third molar. So what we do to block this nerve is that we identify the mucobuccal fold. The landmarks include mucobuccal fold and the buccal shelf area. Now once you have identified the buccal shelf area, which is distal and buccal to the 8. This is a point where the nerve is crossing from the lingual side to the buccal side. Once you have identified this area, retract the area, insert your needle distal and buccal to the last existing molar, that is the 8. Insert it and then you will hit the bone. That is the point where you aspirate and deposit 0.2 cc of local anesthetic to block the long buccal nerve. Now what are the areas that get anesthetized? The buccal mucoperiosteum extending from the third molar to the second premolar and also the cheek corresponding to that area. Thank you. This is Fisher 1, 2, 3 curve, mucobuccal fold, external oblique ridge and the coronoid notch. Insertion, opposite side premolar, bisecting the fingernail. Then advance it by 6 to 8 mm, that is for the lingual nerve. From there, swing the barrel to the opposite side, advance it further to hit the bone, that is the inferior alveolar nerve block. The mucobuccal fold, the second molar or the third molar, buccal shelf area that is being palpated, and then distal and buccal to 8 is the point of insertion. Insert the needle, you will hit the bone in this area, aspirate and deposit the local. Thank you.